Everyone knows Seattle is a city tied to the water, and now we're getting an insider's peek into our city's shipyards of the 1970s. Mike Nolan is the author of this new book, Hard Hat Days, My Re-Education in Seattle Shipyards. Fresh out of college and totally unprepared, Mike found himself sandblasting ships alongside a crew that taught him more about hard work and humility than any classroom ever could. And now, Mike joins me here. Thank you for being here, Mike.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So you worked in the Seattle shipyards in the 1970s.
Yes.
How did you get into this profession?
Oh gosh, desperation. I had come to Seattle, had my college degree in hand. I was going to get a good paying job, make a lot of money, climb the ladder of success. None of that happened. I couldn't find a job. This is during the Jimmy Carter years, and the economy was in the tank. And I got desperate and joined the Ship Scalers Union, a laborers union, primarily African-American men and women who were laborers in the shipyard. Even that didn't work because I kept getting laid off short-term. Laborers come and go. One day you might work 3 days and you're laid off, and you can't make your rent working 2 or 3 days a week.
No.
So, but I was trying, and the lead man came to me at the beginning of his shift and said, "Hey, are you a sandblaster? Can you sandblast?" Kelly, I knew nothing about sandblasting, except I knew they didn't get laid off. I knew the shipyard retained sandblasters. So I wasn't very good at lying, but I tried my best. I was desperate. And I said, "Yes, I'm a sandblaster." He said, "Okay, come with me." And he took me off down to the pier and down to a dry dock, and there were 4 guys standing by a big barge, and they really were sandblasters. And there was Mike, pretending to be a sandblaster. That's how it began.
What did you learn from that experience, though?
That sometimes you have to put yourself out there and trust in other people. As it turned out, the guys were looking at me like, "Who is this white boy and what's he doing here?" And a couple of them started to turn and leave, but one of them said, "Wait a second, guys, we can work this out." And he said, he said you were a sandblaster, is that correct?" And I said, "No, I was lying. I
just need a job.
I had to do something to keep my job." And he thought about it and he said, "Okay, I guess I can understand that." And they said, "Listen, Nolan, that's your name. Listen, Nolan." He said, "You do exactly what I tell you, and then after today, you won't need to lie no more." And I said, "You're going to teach me how to be a sandblaster?" And he said, "Something like that." And then he laughed and he said, "Old sheep know the roads, little lammy's got to follow." That's when my training began.
Wow, I love that so much. The story takes place in the 70s
Yes.
and early 80s. Do you cover issues that are still relevant today, would you say, in this book?
Well, certainly. Unions, good or bad. The union got me my job, but there are some things that don't work well about unions, and I write about that. The American dream, is it accessible like it was in the 70s and 80s? You could go to the union hall, get a good paying union job with benefits, and the access was a pretty wide road. Race relations, I talk a little bit about that, and the applicability of your degree. There I was, 4-year college degree, no job. So those are all issues that I think are still relevant today.
It makes sense. And there's more to this book, though, I understand, than just ships and construction work.
Oh, certainly.
You actually talk about your best friend and a tragic accident, too, at the shipyard. What can you tell me about this?
Gosh, Chris Wells was in the same situation I was. Young guy, just out of college, he's going to work for a year or two and then decide what the next step is. And just a charismatic guy. He was coxswain at University of Washington on the crew team. He was team captain.
Wow.
And he stayed in shape after graduating and worked out and actually made the 1980 United States Olympic team. So he was just this incredible person who, it was tragic. He died in a shipyard accident there. So there are emotional highs and lows that people can relate to, even if they don't have a background in construction work. But emotional highs and lows that take place in the book. That was a low. Emotional high would be there's some romance. Even this romance in this book. I went back to graduate school and I moved a night shift so I could keep my job. And I met a woman in graduate school who was just marvelous. I mean, really special. And a brown-eyed girl from Minnesota. I followed her like a puppy dog.
Brown-eyed girl, I like that.
I followed her like a puppy dog, and we've been married for 42 years.
I was hoping there was a story like that. I'm like, is there a story here?
Yeah, so there's more than just construction in the book.
Yeah. And what do you want the takeaway from people that pick up this book? Because like you said, if they don't maybe have a connection to shipyards and so forth, still they'll have a takeaway.
Yeah, well, a diversion, I hope I can bring them into this different world that maybe they don't know a lot about. Probably most people haven't worked as sandblasters in a shipyard. That But I also hope that they just connect. I mean, here you are getting tested, and you have to kind of trial by fire. You go through and you learn a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you can do. And even if they don't have any construction background, I'm hoping they'll say, yeah, I remember that. I remember that feeling. Just when you're scrapping and trying to assert yourself, but you're not so sure about yourself. Those feelings of coming into your own. I hope they can relate to that.
Yeah, and you have so many memorable characters in this book.
Yes, I'll tell you about one. We had a job called fire watching, where you were assigned to a welder and you were supposed to stand there with your fire extinguisher and make sure they didn't set anything on fire. There was a guy named Sal who was fire watching down in the boiler room. The welder was on the deck, trying to weld something hard to get spot. And Sal was sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, his fire extinguisher, leaning up against the boiler, dead to the world. Now, we all wore safety glasses in the shipyard. You could get dark safety glasses. That's what Sal had. You couldn't see his eyes. And a supervisor walked by, and of course, Sal didn't budge. And then the supervisor came back, and this time he went like this in front of Sal's eyes. And when he didn't budge that time, he jostled him and said, "You're gone." He was gone for 2 days. It turns out they can fire you for sleeping on the job. They can't fire you for praying, because Sal went like this and said, "Amen." That saved him.
Yeah, he did. That saves all of us in some ways, right?
It got me praying.
Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
This
Kelly.
was such an interesting conversation. I can't wait to finish your book.